Have you ever felt like something is wrong even though everything seems fine? Or felt haunted by unwanted thoughts and then had to perform certain actions to make them go away? If so, you might have just scratched the surface of something far more complex, OCD, Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. But hold on. OCD isn't just about being overly clean or perfectionist. Today, we're going to explore what's really happening in the brains of those living with OCD. Not just psychological theories, but through the lens of neuroscience. Because behind every seemingly strange or excessive symptom, there's the brain working overtime, struggling to make sense of it all. Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, or OCD, isn't just an excessive habit or a perfectionist tendency. From a neuroscience perspective, OCD is a neurological disorder characterized by two key elements: obsessions and compulsions. Obsessions are intrusive thoughts or images that arise uninvited, often involving extreme fears such as causing harm to others, committing major sins, or being contaminated. These thoughts trigger the brain's error detection system excessively, as evidenced by increased activity in the error-related negativity, ERN, during EEG studies. The brain mistakes an ordinary situation for a major error even though there is none. To relieve the resulting anxiety, compulsions appear. Certain actions or rituals like checking, washing, counting, or silently praying. Each time a compulsion is performed, a temporary sense of relief occurs, triggering dopamine release. This is where the vicious cycle begins. Dopamine reinforces compulsions as a way to reduce anxiety, despite the long-term worsening of the condition. In the brain of someone with OCD, a crucial circuit plays a central role: the CST loop, or cortico-striato-thalamo-cortical loop. This circuit starts in the orbitofrontal cortex, OFC, the brain area responsible for assessing potential errors or dangers. In people with OCD, fMRI scans show that the OFC is hyperactive, often up to 40% more than in people without OCD. The OFC then sends signals to the caudate nucleus and basal ganglia, structures in the brain that are supposed to filter information before it's sent back to the thalamus and ultimately to the cortex. However, in OCD, this circuit gets stuck. The false alarm keeps going, making the brain feel like there is something unfinished or not right, which then triggers compulsive urges. This is not a personality flaw. It's an overdrive in the brain's error detection system. The basal ganglia, the filter for thoughts that leaks. The basal ganglia, particularly the caudate nucleus and putamen, play an essential role in filtering unnecessary thoughts and motor responses. Normally, they act as the brain's filter, eliminating irrelevant impulses before they lead to action. But in OCD, studies have shown that GABA, an inhibitory neurotransmitter, decreases in these areas. As a result, glutamate, an excitatory neurotransmitter, dominates, which makes signals that should be suppressed stronger instead. This explains why intrusive thoughts in OCD feel so real and are difficult to ignore. Overactivation of the basal ganglia is also linked to the development of compulsive behaviors because the brain fails to close the response cycle to obsessions. Anterior cingulate cortex, ACC, and overblown fear. The anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, is the brain area deeply involved in processing emotional conflict and moral evaluation. The ACC has two primary regions: dorsal, which is more cognitive, and rostral, which is more emotional. Research has shown that in OCD patients, the volume of gray matter in the rostral ACC increases significantly. This area also shows stronger connectivity with the OFC. As a result, individuals with OCD are more likely to experience excessive guilt, over-responsibility, and fear of moral mistakes. This explains why many OCD sufferers feel evil just for thinking bad thoughts, even though they never intended to act on them. The ACC acts as an internal judge that constantly renders guilty verdicts, even when no violation has occurred. Neurotransmitters and neuroinflammation. Neurotransmitters play a key role in the pathophysiology of OCD. Serotonin, for example, has long been associated with OCD, evidenced by the effectiveness of SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. However, recent studies have also highlighted the role of glutamate, the brain's main excitatory neurotransmitter. OCD patients have been found to have higher levels of glutamate in their cerebrospinal fluid. This imbalance between glutamate and GABA is believed to create a short circuit in the brain. Additionally, dopamine is involved, particularly in reinforcing compulsive behavior. Each compulsion that relieves anxiety releases dopamine, which makes compulsions more habitual. Recently, there's growing evidence that OCD also involves inflammation. Cytokines like IL-6 and TNF-alpha are elevated in some OCD patients, suggesting that the brain's immune system might be playing a role in the disorder. Neuroimaging and new biomarkers. Advances in neuroimaging have brought us closer to understanding OCD. Through fMRI scans, we can see how connectivity between the orbitofrontal cortex, thalamus, and ACC increases significantly when OCD symptoms are active. In fact, these connectivity patterns are now being used as biomarkers to predict the severity and treatment response. In deep brain stimulation, DBS, studies, researchers have identified electrical activity patterns in the brain called local field potentials that could serve as markers to predict whether a person will respond to therapy. PET scans with tracers for inflammation also show increased activation of microglia, brain immune cells, within the CSTC loop. All of this gives hope for more accurate diagnostics and therapies. Neuroplasticity and neuromodulation therapies. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to adapt and change. This concept forms the foundation for therapies like ERP, exposure and response prevention, which has been shown to reduce activity in the OFC and ACC after several weeks. This therapy teaches the brain that anxiety can subside without compulsions. In addition to behavioral therapies, neuromodulation is emerging as a promising alternative. For example, transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, can target specific areas of the brain, and early studies show that combining it with ERP yields far better results. Other technologies like vagus nerve stimulation and focused ultrasound are also being developed to modify brain circuits without the need for surgery. For severe cases, deep brain stimulation, DBS, is becoming a hopeful option, with electrodes implanted in the brain to regulate electrical signals with precision. OCD also has a strong genetic foundation. Studies have shown that mutations or variations in certain genes, such as SLC1A1, which regulates glutamate transport, are linked to an increased risk of developing OCD. Other genes like SPAP3 and SLITRK5, which are involved in synapse formation and neuron structure, have also been implicated in the disorder, with mutations causing OCD-like behaviors in animal models. Besides genetics, epigenetic factors also play a role. Childhood stress or traumatic experiences can trigger changes in gene expression, such as methylation of the BDNF gene, which regulates neuron growth. In other words, OCD is not just about inherited traits, but also a complex interaction between genes, environment, and experience. After understanding how complex and profound OCD is from a neurological standpoint, we should replace stigma with empathy. OCD isn't a choice, a sign of weakness, or something trivial. It's a neurological condition that can be explained, understood, and, most importantly, treated. The more we learn about the neuroscience behind OCD, the more we are invited to stop judging and start caring. Because for many, knowledge is not just power, it's a healer. So now we know that behind the misunderstood symptoms of OCD, there's an incredibly complex brain process at work. This disorder isn't a mental weakness or a personality flaw. It's a neurological condition that can be explained, understood, and treated. The more we understand the neuroscience behind OCD, the more we're called to stop judging and start showing empathy. For many, knowledge isn't just power, it's healing. Thank you for watching until the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you believe this information is important for more people to know. See you in the next video. We'll continue to explore the other sides of mental health with empathy and scientific insight.